No one asked her name. No one offered a coat. Marley Denkin, a man with a jaw like cracked granite and a voice like gravel soaked in whiskey, stood beside her chewing tobacco and calling it what it wasn't. "This here's a burden, gentlemen," he drawled. "Ain't a woman, not really. Ain't a wife, nor fit to be one. Barely speaks. Eats too much. Do any day now. But she'll do for company if you're low enough to care less." No one laughed, but no one stopped him either. John Milton stood at the fence post by the blacksmith's forge, arms folded, the snow catching on the shoulders of his coat like he couldn't be bothered to brush it off. 34 and already worn out in the eyes, his boots cracked, his horse hungry, and his soul just quiet. He hadn't come to buy anyone. He'd come for nails and a horseshoe. But there are things you see once, and then they sit in your gut forever. That girl, that silence, those bound wrists, those were things. He spit once and watched the steam rise. No one moved. The auction didn't have a sign. The preacher wasn't there. The sheriff was near, pretending not to see. And still, no one said her name. Marley coughed. $10. She eats less than a cow and don't talk back. Anyone. The woman didn't flinch, didn't cry, just stared ahead like the world ended somewhere past the saloon doors. John stepped forward, slow. The snow crunched under his weight. He didn't clear his throat, didn't ask questions. He just asked the only thing that needed asking. "How much?" Marley blinked. 10. John nodded, reached into the fold of his coat, and pulled out what little cash he had. 2 folded 5s he'd been saving for winter feed. He didn't look at them long before he handed them over. Marley grunted. "She's yours. Don't come crying if she keels over." He didn't touch her. He just turned his back and walked. And she, after a beat, followed. The ropes were still on her wrists when they left town. No one moved to cut them. No one said goodbye. It was a long walk to where John's horse waited, tied to a post near the smithy. The horse, a roan named Buller, lifted its head like it half expected hay, and got heartache instead. John untied the rope, looked at the woman, then at the saddle. "You ride," he said. She didn't, just shook her head, quiet and trembling. So he mounted, and they walked together. The trail out of town wound past the cemetery, past the creek that froze over too early that year, past the place where John's wife had died 3 winters ago with a baby still inside her. He hadn't touched another woman since. Hadn't wanted to. Still didn't. But this wasn't want. This was something deeper. Like a promise he hadn't spoken yet. By the time they reached his land, the snow was coming down harder. Thick flakes, heavy and wet, clinging to branches like ghosts. She didn't ask where they were. He didn't say. The cabin stood at the edge of a pine grove, smoke curling from the chimney like it, too, was reluctant to rise. He opened the door for her. She hesitated. Her hands trembled at the threshold. "Inside's warmer," he said, not looking at her. She stepped in. The cabin was small. 1 room. A stove with a pot of water half warm. A table with 1 chair. A cot made up with wool and flannel in the corner. John pointed to it. "That's yours." She sat. Her belly rested heavy on her thighs. Her hands moved to cradle it. He stoked the fire, took off his coat, hung it on the nail by the door, said nothing for a long time. "You hungry?" She nodded once. He ladled broth from the pot. No meat in it, just turnip and salt. She drank slowly. Her eyes never met his. He watched her, quiet as the walls. Next morning, the town had its story. Milton brought a girl home. A girl with bruises. A belly. A silence that made people itch. At the general store, May Harrow whispered into cupped hands. "That girl, she's no bride. Probably picked up from one of those mining towns. Couldn't sell herself, so she sold her silence." At the livery, men chuckled into their coffee, unsure what was worse, Milton's poverty or his taste. John heard none of it. Or he did and didn't care. He chopped wood, mended the roof, hammered in a broken stair. She watched, not speaking, but her eyes followed him like they were learning him. On the 4th day, she spoke. "Etta," she said, voice brittle. "My name." He nodded, didn't ask more, just handed her a better shawl. Next week, They went to town. She needed boots. He told her so. The shopkeeper stared at her stomach, then looked at John. Ain't got much in her size. Try, John said, voice low. She tried 3 pairs. Chose none. Finally found one that didn't pinch her toes. John paid, without counting the coins. Outside, Sheriff Tuggard waited. She legal? The sheriff asked. Not smiling. Paid for her, John said. She ain't property. She ain't yours either. Tuggard huffed. Keep her out of trouble. She ain't the one looking for it. They rode home quiet. The snow had gone to mud. Her boots, already stained, held tight to the stirrups. She looked ahead this time, not down. That night, she cooked. It was plain, beans and bread, but she'd seasoned it with something warm. John ate slow, not used to it. You don't ask nothing, she said finally. He shrugged. You talk when you're ready. She stared into the fire. He wasn't my husband, just a man who found me tired and said I owed him warmth. Got tired of me when the baby came. John nodded once. Didn't speak. She added. He said I was ruined. Said the child wasn't worth his name. So he sold me. John's jaw tightened. He lied. She looked at him then, really looked. You think so? I know it, he said. The fire crackled. Her hand found the mug in front of her. She sipped slow. Then again. Her breathing was easier. That night, the storm came. Wind howling through pine, like a church organ in mourning. Rafters shook. Snow forced itself through cracks. She screamed once. Not from pain, but fear. John rushed to the cot. She was clutching her belly, rocking forward. Storm's passin', he said, voice softer than she expected. Ain't nothing getting you tonight. She cried then. Not loud, but long. He lit the lantern. Sat nearby. Didn't touch her. Just stayed close, like a wall between her and whatever memory she was fighting. In the morning, the snow had blanketed everything. The fence, the trees, the tracks. A silence too deep for words. Etta stepped outside with her hand on the doorframe. Looked at the world like she was seeing it for the first time. You're not afraid of them, are you? She asked. Of who? The people. The whispers. No. Why? He paused, then said, They ain't the ones I come home to. She smiled for the first time. It wasn't big, just enough to warm the air between them. Later that day, she sat by the window, sewing a tear in one of his shirts. He chopped wood, glancing back now and then like the presence of her at the window was something new and good. Inside, the stove glowed. Outside, the snow started again. There was no kiss, no vow, no firework, just the way she said, thank you, that evening, and the way he replied, sleep well. But it was enough. In a town where names were traded like currency, they had not spoken of love. They had only survived it. And yet, something had shifted. Not in the town, not in the gossip, but in the way she cradled her belly, and the way he added more wood to the fire than he needed to, just in case. Because some things you don't auction, some things you carry, even when they're heavy, especially when they are. The spring thaw came like a slow kindness, mud-soft earth, ice melting off pine needles, and the creek murmuring again. Etta moved slower now. The child pressed hard against her spine, and each breath came like a quiet apology. But she no longer flinched when John reached for the kettle, or when the wind caught the door too hard. She no longer asked if she'd done something wrong. She just whispered to the baby some mornings when she thought he wasn't listening, and smiled when the stove crackled warm. The labor came in the hush of a gray dawn. No thunder, no drama, just a sound sharp, low from her cot. John heard it and knew without knowing. He dropped the axe mid-swing and ran inside. Tell me what you need, he said, voice rough with worry. She was already slick with sweat, hair matted to her face. Water. Rags. You. He blinked. You sure? She nodded, teeth clenched. You're the only one I trust. The doctor in town wouldn't come. John rode like the devil to Pastor Wilkes' door, mud flying off his boots, shouting, My wife's in labor. She needs help. The pastor answered slow, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Wife. John met his gaze. She is now. Will came with what little he knew. Clean cloths, a psalm half remembered. But it was John who stayed by her side, who whispered her name when the pain curled her spine and the room spun, who knelt in the blood and salt and steam of that fire-warm cabin and caught a screaming baby girl just as the sun broke through the frost-streaked window. Etta collapsed back, sobbing, not from fear, but relief. John held the child with shaking hands. The baby was red-faced and squalling and perfect. Not ruined, not shameful, just alive. She's beautiful, Etta whispered. So's her mother, John said. He wrapped the baby in an old quilt, the same quilt his late wife had sewn, years ago. He'd never let another soul touch it. Until now. When the pastor asked what name they'd give her, John looked to Etta. Whatever you choose, he said. You're her first home. Etta stared down at the child in her arms, then whispered, Mercy. That Sunday, they walked into town together. Etta, the baby, and John with his coat buttoned clean and his chin high. The townsfolk fell silent. No one dared speak. May Harrow crossed herself. The sheriff tipped his hat without meeting their eyes. Pastor Wilk opened the chapel doors wide. That night, John knelt at the flowerbed by the porch, his hands in the earth. Etta watched him from the doorway, baby asleep on her chest. Why flowers now? She asked. Because we survived winter, he said. She stepped down, barefoot in the dirt, and leaned into him like it was the only thing she'd ever wanted. And it was in that quiet, no crowd, no papers, no altar, that she knew. She'd never been bought. She'd been chosen. And this time, she chose back.